Have you been wondering how organisations around the world are solving plastic pollution? Or whether our individual actions are making any difference? Or even how to get something going yourself? Tune in for conversations with me, Nat, founder of City to Sea, and my inspirational guests from around the world. Welcome to Nat's Chats. I want to say it's Dan the Plastic Man. How do you feel about that title?
There's so many Dans in Margate, you see, so everyone's got to have sort of an adjective before their name.
It's a
so
hub.
I'm Plastic Dan.
It's a hub. Well, Let me just give our viewers a bit of an introduction to you. So you set up a movement, really, and an organisation called Everyday Plastic. You've been completely geeking out on plastic, it's fair to say now, for a good few years. And you're inspiring the public to really kind of get a handle on how much plastic they're using, but also to gather data.
Yes, I think I'm going to nick that synopsis, if that's all right.
Yeah, we're recording, which is a good thing. So you can listen to it back. Good. Well, I mean, I love the idea that those of us working in sort of trying to stop plastic pollution have got our little sort of specialities, and I'm known, or some people be like, oh hey, you're the toilet woman. I'm like, oh, you're the 3Ps woman. I think of you when I flush the toilet, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, you know, you're inspiring it somewhere, which is the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you can connect an action to, well, it's actually our strapline, connecting your actions to your oceans. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? Of like actually connecting to when we're flushing, of like making a connection then to the ocean. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm okay with being labelled the toilet woman. And Plastic Dan is quite fun, really, isn't it?
Yeah. 3Ps Nat.
Yeah.
That's what you could do.
Not quite as catchy though, is it? So tell us like how it began for you, because you probably just didn't wake up one day, or maybe you did, and think, I've got all this plastic piling up around me, I'm going to start making a spreadsheet of it. Or are you just crazy about spreadsheets?
Well, I am a fan of a spreadsheet, but it certainly wasn't how it started. So I've lived here in Margate for over 4 years now, and I've never lived by the coast before. I'm from the Midlands originally. I suppose I'd already had an environmental consciousness. So I was running along the coast, and I really was quite surprised by the amount of plastic that I was seeing sort of caught up in seaweed. And it was that one run in particular was just after a storm, and it was just everywhere. And it was, you know, I was seeing lots of sort of familiar items of plastic that had come from all over the world, you know, from different eras. So it was really quite shocking. And the fact that my new flat was 400 meters from an Aldi, you know, having gone out on a run and seeing all this plastic in the seaweed, walk down an aisle in an Aldi, and I think everyone can agree that you can't really escape plastic packaging in Aldi or any other supermarket.
Very hard. I tried yesterday actually, and failed really miserably.
Yeah,
more
very difficult. Yeah. So I was bringing all my, you know, products home from the supermarket, all wrapped in plastic. Made my dinner or my lunch, whatever, and then found that I actually hadn't been delivered a recycling bin yet. So called up my council and said, where is my recycling bin? I've moved in a few months ago and I still haven't received my recycling bin. And they said, actually, recycling is not available to you where you live. And I was just like, whoa, like what kind of council doesn't have recycling? So all these questions started to pop up in my head. You know, if my council's not offering me recycling at my curbside, how effective is recycling? If I'm getting all this stuff from the supermarket, how much food and drink am I buying that's wrapped in plastic? Is any of the plastic that I'm seeing in the seaweed mine? All these questions I had, and I felt like I wanted to understand my own impact on plastic pollution a lot better. So I decided to do just a little experiment and save every piece of plastic that I used for a whole year. So everything that I would have thrown away, I popped into a different bag and saved it. So whether I was at home or on the go or at the cinema or in the pub or at work, wherever. And I kept all these bags in my spare room for a year. So got to the end of that year.
Room.
Very lucky I had a spare room in my little 2-bedroom flat. And 22 bin bags later, I got to the end of that year, and there were all these bags filled with plastic, and I knew I had to do something with it. So,
and 20 bin bags is quite a lot, isn't it? Because plastic squishes up quite small, and I'm assuming you were kind of trying to save some space in there as well to actually have a life in your spare room. So 20 bin bags full of plastic is still quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, it felt like a lot, but it wasn't until I emptied it all out that I realised how much there actually was. So I'm not an artist by any stretch, but I know a photographer, and we were sort of both commissioned to make this big artwork, a big mural. So my photographer friend asked if he could take a photo of all of the plastic that I'd been saving. And obviously that felt like a really good thing to do with it, because I'd gone through the year thinking, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to tell this story? So this was a really good opportunity. But obviously I had those questions that I wanted to answer. How effective is recycling? How much am I using? What is my impact on the plastic problem? So I found a researcher, she's an earth scientist called Dr. Julie Schneider, who was able to answer all these questions because I really had no idea.
Yeah.
So she's the real spreadsheet queen. And what we did was, before we made the artwork, we spent 3 days separating and counting and categorizing and weighing all of this plastic that was in my bag. So we started by separating into hard and soft plastic, and then into different types of plastic, bottles, lids, tops, carry bags, cling film, things like that. Once we'd done all that, we'd had 20 volunteers that helped me. We filled the floor of a 2,000 capacity music venue with all of this plastic waste.
All of your plastic?
All of my plastic waste covered the floor of this 2,000 capacity venue. And it was the most sort of shocking experience I've had, I think, for a number of years, perhaps ever, just to see everything that I'd used. And, I couldn't remember using hardly any of this stuff. It really told me something about how we consume and just disconnect from what we're buying, and, what kind of passes through our hands, and the impact that, say a bag of crisps has. We'll eat it in 2 minutes, and then that bag of crisps will exist probably beyond our own years. So it was a really shocking moment for me. But obviously from that experience, we like I said, we counted and categorized it all. We were able to determine what my impact was on the plastic problem.
Which I guess you felt was quite significant when you realised it could fill a 2,000 sort of seater venue. Then you realised that your impact was quite chunky.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to understand if this was normal, because does everyone's waste cover the floor? Would everyone's waste cover the floor of a 2,000 capacity music venue? So we determined. Or were
you just really hungry?
I mean, I am quite a hungry person, I will say that. But yeah, there were almost 4,500 pieces in total.
Yeah.
93% of it was single-use packaging, which I suppose shouldn't be a surprise, seeing as it all ended up in the bin. But single-use packaging really is designed with one purpose, and that is for it to be thrown away after it's been used. So that was really, really surprising. 67% of it was food and drink, so over 2/3 was food and drink packaging waste. We found that only 30% would end up or is considered recyclable by local councils. So in a best case scenario, if everything that could be recycled was recycled, that would mean only 30% of the waste that I collected would end up in that category. So 70% is not even collected for recycling.
Yeah.
And then I suppose most shockingly, we found that only 4% of what I threw away would end up being recycled here in the UK, and more, in fact, ends up getting exported. So yeah, I needed to communicate these details really, and this story, because I don't think anyone would have gone through this whole experiment and this whole process.
And there's something really different about kind of maybe just looking at your week's plastic, like, we've spoken to people before about doing a plastic audit and, looking at, but actually it's fast paced, isn't it? It goes, if you have recycling, they come every week, your waste is taken away. So it's this constant flow. So you're not conscious of how much you are accumulating. And we were last week down in a caravan in Cornwall and had 4 teenagers and me and my partner. And because I didn't have my usual recycling bins and my compost bin, and the site did have recycling, but it was very limited. So we were separating out. But even just in a week for 6, the teenagers are quite grown up and buying their own stuff as well. Seeing it all piling up for me was a shock, because I'm used to, I'm used to living with less plastic and minimizing how much plastic I bring into the house anyway. But with 6 of us on holiday and not being able to compost our food waste, it was the amount of waste that we were generating, and it was shocking. And so for you to do that for 52 weeks, I'm not surprised that you had a really big kind of catalyst shift in that moment. And it's amazing that you've taken that energy and now you're communicating that with others. So tell us what have you done since you had this amazing piece of art and it captured people's attentions, and now you're developing that, aren't you?
Yeah. So exactly that. I think it shifted my behavior and lifestyle so much that I think if it could do that for me, then I knew it could do that for others as well. So firstly, I wanted to go out and talk to people about it and talk to people about my experience. So just, going to schools and businesses, communities, events, and telling people what happened, really in more detail. And it certainly does raise a lot of eyebrows and lots of gasps and sighs. And I think what it does maybe differently to other campaigns is provide that very personal connection to the plastic problem. Because I think a lot of the time people, certainly in my experience, in a lot of schools, kids think about plastic pollution as something that affects turtles in the Pacific Ocean. But really this is designed to say this plastic pollution is created at home by you as soon as you throw out that bag of hula hoops. So that was certainly one of the things that I wanted to do. And I suppose what the experience has led me to do is to launch a new project, which essentially encourages people to do the same as me, not collect their plastic for a year, because that is a bit extreme, but collect your plastic for a week and then analyze it through the methodology that we developed. And what then that can do is generate each person's own plastic footprint in the same way that it did for me. So we'll be able to tell them how many pieces they threw away, how much of it is food packaging, where it ends up. But I suppose most importantly, it can help them to identify where they can make the sort of quick and simple and cheap changes. So that's our sort of current project called the Everyday Plastic Survey, which we're sort of working on currently.
And we did that with City to Sea, didn't we? That you came into the office. Yeah. And I was away. I promise I wasn't just avoiding being called out.
Yeah, sure.
But so what were the results of the team? How did we do for an organisation that is, I can take it. Go on, tell me, how did we
No,
do?
it's good. I mean, really interesting, and obviously a lot of very conscious people who took part. I think there was 10 of your team who took part. Some who lived on their own, some who had families with young kids. So the amount of waste created was varying. I worked out the average, and it was about 65 pieces per home, which is way under the average that we determined.
That's a lot. That's still like 10 pieces of plastic a day, isn't it? Pretty much.
It is. It's a lot, but
I'm going to go and have words with them.
But you'll be pleased to hear there were no single-use water bottles. So
of course.
Yeah,
they'd be out, Dan. They'd be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't, because having a teenage son, like, it's probably once a week that a plastic bottle appears magically in the house. Yeah. And I was really annoyed this week when it was a Lucozade bottle, because they've got that film on it that's not.
They've got the wrap around it. Yeah, yeah.
So I did have words with my son about that one.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, so that's exciting. So you've done it with organisations, and you're doing it with people. So if people want to get involved and do it themselves, is that what you're asked to individuals and people at work is?
Yeah. So we've worked with organisations like yours, and schools, businesses, but also lots of families and community groups. So at the moment we're sort of essentially in a trial phase. So involves me working with the groups in person, or over Zoom, which is what we've done during lockdown. And then I'll take away the data and analyse it myself, and then we report back with their personal plastic footprint. And it's had a really great response, and it really has been brilliant to see how it's helped people to understand the plastic problem better. It's certainly improved awareness of it and people's own impact on it. It's helped people to reduce what they're using, which is again one of our key objectives, is to really help people just use less plastic and show them exactly, just by reducing your fruit and veg packaging by 25%, or cutting out water bottles completely, or even just reducing your snack intake by only 10%, what the impact that could be on your weekly, the amount of waste that you produce weekly, and, kind of trying to scale that up to, if everyone sort of did the same as you, then what, would the impact be on, from the whole country? So it really is designed to show that, individual actions can make a big difference.
Yeah. And so you're seeing that just by having that physical experience of how much waste people are creating and how much plastic they're generating, it's inspiring them to just make simple switches or changes. What impact are you seeing, other than you've been getting some great media coverage, which is brilliant for raising awareness? Are you seeing any changes, like, have Margate now introduced a recycling system, or are you seeing any changes with government? Are you doing anything in that respect?
Sadly, the recycling in Margate is still the same. We haven't been able to make an impact there, but not through want of trying. But yeah, so really what we want to do is to launch this on a national scale. We want to get thousands of families involved in this, and thousands of households to take part in this. Essentially, the bigger the sample we can get, the more data we can gather, the more impact we believe we can have on industry and government, particularly local level and national level as well. We did get a response from DEFRA, who responded to the media coverage that we received just from our sort of lockdown edition. So we really believe that having a bigger sample size can really start to push government towards change, and especially if this is a crowdsourced experiment, people there's no manipulation or exploitation of figures. What we do is report back on the reality of the situation. It's a representative and relevant snapshot of what is getting thrown away across the country in just 1 week.
Yeah, and I really encourage anybody watching who can get involved with this to get involved, because, like you say, it's showing that the power of grassroots change, and but also harnessing data in the way that you are is really, really important. So yeah, you fully have our support, and we'll make sure that we get more people signed up to it. So what are your, we'll kind of talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll move a bit more onto the business side, because I know a lot of people ask me, well, how did you do it? And did you expect it to become what City to Sea's become today? So I'm interested in that journey as well. But before we move off of like the day-to-day everyday plastic stuff, what are your like big plastic fails still, or how do you approach plastic now? Like, do you have a sort of, well, I'm just using it because that's the system we're in, or do you really try and have a sort of as free from plastic as possible life? That's a catchy one.
Free from
as free from plastic as possible. I like life. New Instagram.
Now there's a campaign.
That's it, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I definitely try and have a free from as possible plastic life. It's very difficult. Obviously, I think we all struggle. So I'd never say plastic free. It's always less plastic. But there are sort of changes that I've made that are just sort of habits now. Buying fruit and veg loose, or we get a local veg box. I also buy in bulk. I buy rice and lentils and oats and pasta in bulk. Fortunately, in Margate, we have a refill store, which is very lucky. So lots of bulk buying. The main thing that I suppose I've changed is just I buy so much less stuff now, and I think that has made it a lot easier to avoid plastic. Plastic fails.
Plastic fails. That's what I want.
Yes.
Like, what are your things that you still can't shift?
Crisps. I just can't shift it. I can't resist a packet of crisps.
I just ordered last week for the first time. I ordered a whole box of Two Farmers crisps, because they do free delivery, and then there was like a 10% discount if you signed up to their mailing list or something like that. But it was basically 24 packets of crisps, but it was still 24 quid. So if you don't have crisps very often, or you haven't got a family that are, so for anyone that's watching Two Farmers, this is not an advertising plug, but Two Farmers crisps, if you want to partner with us, then you can. They have home compostable packaging on their crisps, so they literally will compost if you just bury it in your garden. But if you're eating one a day, you probably don't want to bury one of them a day in your garden. It's still not very accessible, is it? Like, if you can buy like 6 packets of crisps for 80p from Aldi or any other sort of supermarket, really, it's not affordable, is it, for sort of everyday families?
No. So I think, if you do want to eat crisps, what I always suggest is buying bigger packets. So you're not buying multi-packs of crisps. To buy a bigger pack and decant, especially if you've got a kid at school, decant it into a lunchbox, put it in a reusable container. That obviously saves 6 pieces of plastic from going into the waste system or the environment. And the other thing is just maybe trying to just treat it as a treat. And certainly I've cut down on the amount of crisps that I've eaten.
It's just one bag of Doritos a week now, isn't it?
It's just one a week now, yeah. So maybe the odd hula packet hula hoops. But it's certainly, I suppose, one of those things that I've always found hard to avoid. Toiletries wise, I've completely cut back on what we use. It's a bar of soap and the toothbrush and a stick of deodorant, and that is it now. So
it's really.
I mean, I'm very lucky that I don't have to have shampoo or conditioner or anything.
Well, there's many options for it now. I mean, like you say, shampoo bars, conditioner bars, refill. I refill my shampoo. So yeah, those things are great, aren't they? So what about your like peak moment in this journey so far? Have you had like a real like heart-stopping, like, hopefully it carried on beating, but you know, a moment for you? What's been like the highlight of the journey so far?
I think being able to go out and talk to people about this. I think last year I must have spoken to 5,000 people across the country, schools and events and businesses. I think the fact that people are sort of interested is actually quite galvanizing, not just in my story, but actually in the plastic problem in general. And people want to hear about solutions, want to hear real stories, and they want to get involved. And I think the important thing is that you don't have to have an environmental background, you don't have to have an activist background or an academic or a scientific background. I think this is that if there can be a best thing about plastic pollution, it's the fact that everyone can relate to it. No matter if you're Piers Morgan or the Daily Mail, everyone can get behind it, because everyone they don't want this level of waste, and they don't want to be throwing out two bin bags a week of stuff, so I think that's being the interest that people have in plastic pollution has been really sort of a great part of this journey.
Yeah, good. And that human connection is great, isn't it? And I think like anything that kind of connects us more to our communities and
absolutely, yeah,
brings us closer to connecting our actions to the impact it has on the world is rewarding, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you said earlier, the grassroots movement is something that I really, really believe in. I believe that people should feel empowered to know that their actions make a difference. Whether it's by voting for, in an election, or it's by choosing not to buy a single-use plastic water bottle. I think encouraging people to know that what you're doing has an impact is really, really important. And I think there are organisations who will always go for the big guns, for the industry, for the government. But from my perspective, I always want to be working with people on the ground, and helping to shape, behaviours and habits and attitudes.
And it all works together, doesn't it? Those organisations who are working hard on the lobbying side and the sort of the policy, with then getting the support from the grassroots, from the public.
Exactly.
Where it comes together.
Yeah.
So what were you doing before all this happened? Like, imagine you had a job and you were doing something else in life, and now it sounds like plastic has taken over, which is kind of what happened to me. But what were you doing before?
So I was working in marketing. So I'd worked in marketing I hadn't taken on a marketing job for about 12 months now. So that is my background. I've worked across sort of lots of different sectors. I worked in music and art for a long time. Then I worked as a freelance consultant, working with restaurants and other events. So I think that's the marketing background. I really do feel has helped me to sort of put together or look at this as a campaign with an end goal and objectives and outcomes. And certainly in terms of planning and communication and messaging, understanding how important that is, and trying to think of the messages that people are going to prick people's ears. And I suppose that really was one of the reasons why, going so extreme on collecting, plastic for a year. I mean, a week or a month just probably wouldn't cut it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think that was really, really helped to shape it.
Yeah, really interesting to hear. And I love that sort of transfer of skills. And that was similar to me. I'd been working in TV and media. So I brought when we started off on City to Sea, I had the skills to be able to, present something to camera and produce something. And so the people that we had working with us in the early days were worked more from film. And that was, back in 2015, 2016, when you put something on Facebook, it could really fly. Obviously, it's kind of different now. But I think kind of having those transferable skills has been part of our success, for sure. And so that's really interesting to hear. That's the theme for you.
I agree. Too. And I think, going on with what you're saying, I think the environment sector really needed people or like you and City to Sea to help connect the dots from, the science and the sort of the abstract sort of doomy sort of outlook to really bring it up to people in their homes. So I think it's I've obviously followed City to Sea since the start, and I think being able to communicate things in the way that you do through your campaigns is absolutely integral to shifting this on.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and it changes really fast, doesn't it? So I think that ability to sort of be a young organisation, and I noticed you'd set up as a community interest company as well, and not as a charity. And I think for us, that allowed us to have a bit more flexibility and to be able to take more risks, but still have that kind of full community purpose baked into to who we are and what we do. So have you managed to fully transition? Like, are you now getting paid to do what you do? And how did you go about, because I know a lot of our viewers, watchers, I nearly called you all watchers. You're not watchers, you're viewers. Twitchers. Our friends, our community are interested in how do you get paid to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly things are a lot leaner than they were, but I'm full-time on this project now. Fortunately, I get paid to go and talk to people. I get paid to do a bit of consultancy through some sort of small sponsorships, and I've also sort of received some very sort of kind support from another organisation called Hubbub, who've helped to really sort of develop the new project, the Everyday Plastic Survey. Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of, they've been incredibly supportive, and they're again sort of similar to you, excellent communicators. So yeah, I mean it's a very sort of lean way of living, a lot leaner. So my less plastic lifestyle kind of works concurrently with that sort of smaller income, I suppose. But I suppose the long-term plan for me is to attract enough funding to launch this project nationally, to the potential that I believe it can have. So, we are looking for funding. Anyone out there, any watchers looking for funding and looking to fund an environmental project, please get in touch. So I think it's, like you guys, who sort of developed very organically. That's certainly what I'm sort of starting to see happen. Yeah. And I guess you need a degree of perseverance and belief. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be here now if I didn't believe that this could have a long-term impact, I suppose. So it's very difficult, and it's not always easy to keep going sometimes. And there's a lot of sort of letdowns, but there's also huge highs, and I know that I don't want to not do anything else until I'm told not to. So I'm going to keep going, and hopefully this can just get bigger, and we can help more and more people across the country.
And so is your partner happy to have the spare room back now? And I know you've got a new baby. So are you still filling that room with plastic, or are you? Yeah. Is it reclaimed?
I swap plastic for baby.
Yeah. So, I'm afraid they come with a lot of plastic as well, generally.
Yeah. So I don't think we've got to the big, plastic stage yet, because she's only 6 months. So,
amazing.
Free food.
Yeah, and washable nappies, I hear.
Washable nappies, yeah, we do mix them with some disposables, just because we don't have enough. We've got 15 reusable nappies, but I think we need about 40.
Yeah.
So we're definitely doing, parenting as with less plastic as possible. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting few years. Well,
yeah,
long time to try and keep the plastic down with her as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll manage it. And I mean, I think we all have to sort of give ourselves a break in that when we need to, in terms of the fact is that we live in this system, and it's really hard for us to live with less plastic and for it to be affordable. But that's the thing that we're trying to change, isn't it? So
yeah,
huge kudos to you, Dan, for your amazing work. And I'm sure that, those, again, for us, those early years were tough. It was a really, really hard slog. So yeah, just definitely look after yourself, keep taking some good sort of regen time, and I'm sure the funding will come in, because it's a really great project. So yeah, keep at it.
Thanks, Nat.
And thanks for our watchers, that's you. Where can they find you if they're not following you already on Instagram? Give us the deets, and how can they get in touch with the Everyday Plastic Survey?
Okay, so everydayplastic.org is our website, so you'll be able to sign up to our mailing list on there, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And
any particular sort of months that you want people to, are you kind of working towards, like an autumn push, or like doing it around Christmas? Are there any sort of campaigns that you've got in around that?
Well, we like we've mentioned, sort of, we did the survey over lockdown, so we've managed to sort of trial it to a point where we've sort of evidenced demand, and we've been able to hone that and tweak the process. So we're now working towards this big national launch, which hopefully is going to be next year, probably summer to autumn next year. So please just go to the website, sign up to the mailing list. We're looking for volunteers as well. So if you do want to get involved, then we'd love to have you as well. Yeah, they definitely make the wheels go round in the early stages. Yeah. Great stuff. All right, Dan. Well, thanks for joining me on that chat. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll see you back in the office at some point when you come back. I hope so, yeah. Help you with the launch. It'd be great to see you guys. Yeah, great. Thanks, then. Take care. Bye. Bye. You've been listening to Nat's Chats. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. You'll see my face, like go.